From The Times and The Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm Luke Jones. Constance Kampfner, our northern correspondent, is on the phone.
Hello?
And undercover.
Oh, hi. Is this Rachel's Vineyard?
It is, yeah.
She's investigating an organisation that claims to help women who are struggling after having had an abortion.
I was wondering if you'd be able to give me some advice.
Yeah.
I wanted to call, I'm not sure exactly what it is that I need, but I saw on Mumsnet that you help women who've had abortions.
That's right.
I guess I'm halfway through.
She's posing as a young woman who's begun the abortion process.
I took the first pill last night, but I didn't really sleep, and I'm just sort of wondering whether it was the right thing to do.
It was the worst decision I ever made in my life. You see, I wasn't ready. I didn't want to be a mum. I didn't think I could cope. But abortion didn't solve that problem for me. It just meant I was a mum to children that aren't here anymore. The reason I'm saying all this to you is if you had the pill last night, you can reverse it.
What do you mean?
There's a tablet you can take. There's a doctor who can give you some tablets.
And is it is it safe?
Very safe.
It actually isn't considered safe for this use in the UK. So who is the group recommending this? And what are they trying to do? What's their mission? The story today, the pro-life organisation offering abortion counselling. When did you first hear about Rachel's Vineyard?
It was just over a year ago. I've been interested in anti-abortion groups and how they operate in the UK for a little while, and I did some work in Scotland looking into another group. And off the back of that work, I was scrolling through a couple of online forums, and I was interested in what kind of advice women were getting, not only who had found out that they were pregnant unexpectedly, but also women who'd had abortions and maybe felt confused and conflicted about that. And I noticed that a few women were writing about their experiences at a place called Rachel's Vineyard and recommending it to others. So I started to look into this group.
And Rachel's Vineyard described themselves as what?
So they describe themselves as a service, as retreats for anyone who has been harmed by abortion, a place for women, but not just women, men, other people who've been affected by abortion, to go and to share their experiences and heal from what is described as a significant trauma in their life.
And they're UK-based?
So they're based in dozens of countries around the world, including the UK, but it was originally founded, like so many of these groups, in the United States in the mid-1990s by a woman called Teresa Burke and her husband. And she's a psychologist and author, and she essentially developed a method for women to come to terms with their abortions, as she would put it, really starting from this idea that abortion is harmful, is traumatic to women. And she named it Rachel's Vineyard after a Bible character, after Rachel, who is in Jeremiah. She's the matriarch of Israel, and she weeps for her lost children, the people of Israel, during the Babylonian exile. So it's named Rachel's Vineyard.
And tell us a bit about that first call you had with them investigating this that we heard a bit of a moment ago. How did you get to that point?
So I posed as a young woman called Connie, who'd had an abortion and who was struggling to understand how she was feeling. And the reason we did this is that we'd heard concerns about some of the advice that they were giving to vulnerable women in that position. And we wanted to see how they would respond. So I had a few phone calls over the course of a year with a woman who runs Rachel's Vineyard in the UK and runs some of the retreats in the Midlands. And she is called Rachel Mackenzie, confusingly.
Different Rachel.
Different
Okay.
Rachel. But she's quite a prominent anti-abortion activist, and you might see her kind of outside abortion clinics before that was outlawed, praying for women going in. She's very open about having had 2 abortions herself and why she regrets them, and this kind of being the reason that she wants to help other women in that position.
She sounds quite direct. You had said to her in the call that you had taken an abortion pill.
So I'd taken the first round of abortion medication. So just to lay it out, in the UK, if you're 10 weeks pregnant or less, you can have an at-home abortion, a medical abortion. And it consists of taking 2 rounds of pills, taken a day or 2 apart. So in our story, I'd taken the first round, but I'd started having doubts at that point about whether I wanted to continue with the abortion. She immediately told me that abortion was the worst decision she'd ever made in her life.
And I suffered more from the abortion than I did, than I ever did from anything else that I'd suffered before that. The reason I'm saying all this to you is if you had the pill last night, you can reverse it.
So there is something called an abortion reversal pill. At least that's what they describe it as. It hasn't been approved by the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence. And the idea is that if you're between these 2 medications, you can take this heavy dose of progesterone and it will halt the abortion. She recommended a doctor, Dr. Dermot Kearney.
His name's Dr. Dermot, and I can give you his number if you like.
He's a cardiologist and he prescribes this to women.
So if you want longer to think about it and take these tablets, you can. If that's something you think, well, yeah, I actually want to carry on with my babies, with my pregnancy.
He has previously been investigated by the GMC, the General Medical Council, for prescribing women the reversal pill. And actually restrictions that had stopped him from doing this were dropped after he challenged those restrictions.
We reached out to Dr. Kearney, who told us there were no legitimate concerns about abortion reversal pills and that women seeking them, quote, are fully informed with total honesty about every aspect of the treatment. And this treatment that Rachel was recommending, that this man can give you, is it safe? Is it effective? What do we know about it?
So the reversal pill, the so-called reversal pill, is strongly discouraged in the UK. There's actually evidence that it has led to women being hospitalised with severe bleeding. That was the one time that a proper peer-reviewed clinical trial of the medication was conducted, but it had to be halted abruptly in 2019 because people were being rushed to hospital, 3 women. And no other peer review studies have been conducted. The Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, they put out a joint statement with a few other organisations when reports about this treatment started surfacing, saying that they strongly agreed with the position taken by their American equivalents, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecology, who described the treatment as unproven and unethical.
We also reached out to Rachel Mackenzie for this story, and she told us that, quote, Rachel's Vineyard does not offer medical advice. When women have asked about their options after taking the first abortion pill, we signposted them to Dr. Dermot Kearney so they can make their own informed choices, she said. So this is being recommended to you as somebody who has taken the first of 2 abortion pills and is having doubts about whether to continue. What else did she say on the phone? What was the call? How did the call end?
She was empathetic. She spoke about her own personal experience, how she would never judge another woman for having an abortion.
I've had abortions myself. I always say that, so if you have an abortion, you know that there's no judgment with other people as well, but I know where people have been who've had abortions.
She wasn't telling me I'd sinned, I was going to hell, any things like that. But there was a clear sense, and this is something that I felt throughout this investigation, that abortion was something harmful. She asked me whether I was struggling financially, whether there was anything else she could do to help me continue along with that pregnancy.
How old are you, Connie?
I'm 27.
27. Are you in financial difficulties? Is there anything? Because I know a wonderful charity that could help you with anything you might, if it's money or it's housing, whatever it is, they can solve these problems for you.
It felt like I was very much being directed towards one possible positive outcome.
And then, did you speak to her again after this with the subsequent calls?
Yeah, so after that call ended, she continued to message me on my mobile. She actually shared a video with me, a YouTube video that was called Abortion Pill Reversal Saved My Child. And then when I didn't reply to that, she was urging me to contact Kearney, and she said that she wasn't a medical professional, but time was of the essence if I decided to continue with the pregnancy. And she said, you need to get in touch ASAP, as there's only a small window in which it stands a chance of working.
And what did your persona decide to do at this point?
So we decided to continue along this investigation that I would have had the abortion in this scenario. And a few months later, I phoned and I said that I had decided to go ahead with the abortion. I made it clear again that I wasn't sure how I felt. There was a mixture of some relief, some doubts. And it was at that point that she recommended that I start some counselling sessions with a charity called Image, based in Manchester. There are also retreats that are run by Rachel's Vineyard, but she told me at this stage that I wouldn't be ready for that is not something for a woman who's just had an abortion. Instead, encouraged me to use this other service.
And what do we know about this other service? What did you find?
So Image is a Christian charity, and it has several kind of different functions. On the one hand, it says that it supports women considering termination to, quote, come to your own decision. And that they also run courses for women who have had abortions, a 10-step counselling programme to address unresolved feelings and hurts.
Which all sounds sensible enough on the face of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's only when you dig a little bit deeper that this very clear anti-abortion agenda reveals itself.
So, I don't know if you noticed on the front of your booklet, there's like a river of grief. It's like with the stepping stones.
In the session that I did, there was an image that they call the river of grief. So imagine a drawing of a river. There's sort of a vortex at the middle of it.
You're probably going to go through this river and then you'll get to like the whirlpool of it. So it's like the deep part, and that's usually where the grief kind of happens.
And then there are some stones placed varying kind of closeness to this vortex.
This is basically just any emotions that come to mind that you can put in some of these stones. And the more maybe impactful ones would go closer to the whirlpool, which is in the middle.
And the idea is that you fill it in with emotions related to the abortion and how intensely you feel them in relation to where they are on that chart.
Sometimes things hurt, it's painful, we go through it, and we have to get to the other side, but it's just letting you know that this journey might become difficult at some points, but if you just trust the process, then hopefully we can get you to the other side and hopefully get you to a place where you've got more understanding of why you're feeling this way.
And how did that go when you had to go through that with them?
So I asked explicitly when we were filling in the river of grief, was I only supposed to include negative emotions?
Okay, anything else?
Are these supposed to all be like the negative emotions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, negative emotions.
Like doubt?
And she said, yeah, just negative ones. And then I was struggling to come up with any more. I think I'd said sort of doubt or anxiety or something like that. So at that point, she started to read from a list of possible negative emotions.
I can help you a little bit if you're struggling for words. So I've got this list of emotions here. So there's things like angry, annoyed, anxious, which you've said, ashamed, bitter.
They included things like ashamed, disdain, worthless.
Disdain, disgusted, embarrassed, hurt, inadequate, insecure, trapped, uncomfortable, worried, worthless.
Which was quite a strange experience. I think in the end I opted for something like embarrassed, and we spoke about that.
I bet. We reached out to Image for this story, who told us that they offer free support from a helper using counselling skills, that the helpers generally do not have counselling diplomas, but all have received specialist training and work under the supervision of a qualified counsellor.
The feeling I certainly felt on the other end of that Zoom call was that I was being kind of prodded in one direction.
As part of her investigation, Constance spoke with other people who've had dealings with Rachel's Vineyard, and she put us in touch with one of them, a woman called Emma, who is a nurse and who was 24 years old at the time of her abortion, still living with her parents. When we spoke, she explained first that moment she found out she was pregnant.
It wasn't exactly how I pictured it. It was, so I'd finished a night shift and had gone straight to the nearest shop, which was a Tesco's. I had a pretty good feeling that I was. So I went in, bought the test, and I was living at home with my parents at this point. I just moved back in, and I was like, I can't risk taking this home. So I did it in the Tesco's bathroom as soon as I bought it, and literally found out there and then.
How did you feel in that moment?
I think it was such a mix of feelings. I mean, I was absolutely shattered. I just finished a night shift. Really angry and emotional because I sort of had a gut feeling, but just very, very frustrated, very sort of a bit self-pitying, like, why me? Why is this happening? And just like, how am I going to handle this? Like with the situation I'm in at the moment of doing shift work, back in with my parents. But I knew as soon as that test came up, I knew it wasn't something that I wanted to proceed with. So at least I didn't have to sort of make that decision in that moment.
And did you even know who to turn to? I mean, how you go about starting that process?
Absolutely no clue at all. I've got the test, found out it was positive, went into the car park, got into my car, I sat there on my phone and Googled it. And the first one that came up was BPAS, and I phoned them in the car there and then.
And as you got closer and closer to actually having the abortion, I mean, did you feel okay about it? Did you feel the need to have counselling or talk about it or work through your emotions around it?
So when I had made the initial appointment, I'm assuming just with some poor admin person, I spilled my heart out. I was like, I've been really struggling with my mental health as it is. I'd then been through a breakup, had to move back in with my parents, and it was a pandemic. So I was like, I'd really appreciate if there's any support, not necessarily to talk about my decision, because that I'm on board with and I'm not going to change my mind on that, but just coping mechanisms and just some direction of who I could at least turn to about it.
Was the counselling that you wanted there available? Did you get it?
Absolutely nothing. And I think this was the bit that really upset me the most, is that when I did get the phone call appointment with the nurse, where they sort of like triage you and decide whether you're suitable for it, as I again sort of spilled my heart out to her, and I was like, I really feel like I need some support. And it was the promises that were made. So I was told they might not be able to, get to talk to me beforehand. And I said, that's absolutely fine. If I can talk to someone about it afterwards, I don't have a preference on that. And it was, the promise of somebody will be in contact with you. We've got really good sort of post-abortion counselling services. There's a helpline, we're always available to you. I can't remember if I was promised a phone call or not, but I was expecting to hear from them at least to say, either this is what we can do to help you, or we'll signpost you to some other services. And literally the only contact I got from them was them sending me the pills in the post. And there was this leaflet on aftercare. And that was it. So it was the empty promises.
Emma was aware of a phone line she could call to ask for counselling, but after unburdening herself to the nurse and expecting them to follow up themselves, but getting nothing but a leaflet, she felt like her trust had been broken. So, abortion provider, you feel like didn't turn up for you. How did you come across Rachel's Vineyard?
I want to say maybe 3-4 months, I think, after I'd had the abortion. I was still really struggling. I thought maybe this is something that, I was hoping other people had sort of gone through. So I joined Reddit, never been on Reddit before, because every time I looked for abortion support, I could see loads of subreddits come up. So I put a post on there and I was just like, I'm really struggling. Has anybody else ever gone through this? And there was quite a few comments. I got quite a few private messages, some very supportive, some not so supportive, like, well, of course you're feeling rubbish, you're going straight to hell, like, really horrible things like that. And then I still don't really know if this was somebody who worked for Rachel's Vineyard or had an experience with them, I'm not sure. But they had messaged me privately saying, have you heard of Rachel's Vineyard? It's this great place that is able to support you, and it's all about helping like women heal after this sort of thing. And in my mind, I was like, oh my God, like, sounds good. Like, this sounds perfect. So that had sort of spurred me on to look it up. And the website, I was like, okay, it's a bit religion, faith focused, and I'm not a religious person. So I was like, I don't know if that is just the avenue that would work for me. So I had replied back to this person saying sort of, thank you, but I'm not too sure if this is the right sort of help that I need. And they just kept replying saying how much it was going to help. And then it very quickly turned a little bit nasty.
And that's the conversations you were having on sort of messaging?
Yes, on Reddit, yeah.
So then what made you then actually reach out to them and try and engage their help?
I think I just didn't quite believe it. And I also thought, I don't know if this person that I was speaking to, if they are, if this is sort of true, like I don't know anything about this person, it's somebody I've met on Reddit, like, yeah. I don't know if this is a genuine sort of response. So I did reach out to them, and I don't know why, and I wish I hadn't.
And Constance, when she was doing her reporting, in the first instance, it was a phone call that she had with them. Is that what you had?
No, it was all messaging. They were very keen to speak on the phone, but it wasn't something that just the vibes that I got straight away. I had a gut feeling that's not something I wanted to do with them.
And what kind of thing were they saying?
So again, it started off a little bit positive about how they understand it's a very traumatic experience, and lots of people struggle for different reasons, whether it's regret or just sort of an understanding of it or processing it, which I could understand, of course. But then when it turned into a sort of, we need to heal you and you need to realise that God will forgive you and you need to forgive yourself, and you must realise that this is something you could never do again, and this was such an awful thing that you've done. This is why you're feeling rubbish.
And were some of your struggles and feelings directly tied up with the abortion?
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit in the sense of frustration that I'd sort of ended up in that situation, and I'd put myself there, like, if you're, obviously it wasn't something that was planned. I didn't mean to get pregnant, but struggling so much with my mental health anyway, I was very frustrated that, I'd ended up in that position. Yeah. And then I think just having anger at the fact that the guy that I was seeing, the father, like completely cut contact after that. And then I had a bit of guilt as well. Like, actually, if things had been different, maybe I wouldn't have ended up in this situation. And, the hidden agendas from places like Rachel's Vineyard, it does make you think, oh God, like, I am a really awful person for doing this.
Is that what you thought, talking to them?
Yeah, I did. And then it was only until sort of like after I finished sort of messaging them and like I'd go away and sleep on it that I'd be like, nope. I felt like I was being brainwashed. Like, no, that's not how I feel. And I know it's not. I've always been pro-choice and I always will be. And actually, that's a sort of them problem.
Where did you get your help that you needed from?
I mean, sort of a few months down the line, I met my now partner. I told him everything and he was very sort of understanding, and he was really the only person that I could talk to about it. I could count on one hand the amount of people that know about the abortion, and I would say he's been the most supportive. But I can't say I've really sort of had any help. It's more just been my own sort of acceptance of it and just fumbling my way through it. I ended up having CBT, as a cognitive behavioural therapy, later on that year. Again, didn't really feel like I could bring that up. Looked for counsellors or psychologists that specialised in abortion care, but there's nothing on the NHS. It's all private. I didn't feel like I could find out enough about them. So, I can't say I ever really found the help that I wanted.
So Constance, that was Emma. But what did you make of what she went through, how she experienced all of this?
I thought it was so interesting how she felt kind of failed by mainstream support services and so nearly kind of fell into the orbit of a group like Rachel's Vineyard through social media, through these same forums that had initially led me to investigate them. I put her concerns and the concerns of another woman I'd spoken to BPAS. They don't comment on specific patients, of course. But they explained that they will offer counselling to any woman before and after her abortion if support needs are identified, and that they'll arrange this for the patient if it's accepted. They said, at BPAS, we believe it's essential to make emotional support and or counselling easily accessible to all patients who want to talk about their thoughts, feelings or experiences before or after abortion. We want to empower women to see their decision as thoughtful and responsible while acknowledging and normalising any difficult feelings.
BPAS also said that significant changes had been made to its counselling provision as recently as 2024. Constance, you were describing earlier, and we just heard from Emma there, about what some of these initial stages of this possible process are like, particularly the calls with Rachel's Vineyard. You mentioned earlier the idea of these retreats that they also run, which when you were talking to them, they were saying you weren't ready for these at this point. What exactly are they?
So these are weekend residential retreats, up to 12 participants, and they're run by a Catholic priest, a counsellor and some volunteers. And there's a programme that was developed in the US that, as far as we can tell, is the one that is shared by Rachel's Vineyard across the world. And it's essentially a mix of exercise and sharing stories, so speaking to other people who have maybe been through something similar. And the whole weekend culminates in this memorial service, essentially, where you are encouraged to metaphorically lay your dead child, as they would see it, to rest. The women and the people there are encouraged to name them, sometimes to write letters, poems, candle lighting, that sort of thing. The idea is it's a sort of therapeutic letting go. And we also know about some other rituals. So organisers in the UK a few years ago described how participants are invited to carry a stone with them throughout the weekend, everywhere they go, so to the bathroom, to the dining room, in bed. And this is a symbol, as they put it, of their condemnation. So you're sort of carrying this burden around with you.
It's very clear, obviously, that Rachel's Vineyard and also Image, who you spoke to as well, have a religious mission. But is that why you think they are doing all of this? Because they genuinely feel like they are helping people?
Absolutely. They believe that abortion is wrong. They believe that abortion harms women. And Rachel Mackenzie has explicitly said, that she is hoping and working towards a day where abortion would become unthinkable, which, given that, according to polls, 90% of people in the UK are pro-choice, is hard to fathom. But nevertheless, that is explicitly part of the mission.
And it's interesting that there's an American connection to this. You mentioned how Rachel's Vineyard is this US-born organisation. And yet here in the UK, it's not as divisive a culture war issue. For the most part, it seems like something that we have moved past the debate on, or maybe we haven't. We were only talking a few months ago about that amendment to the current policing bill, which was to decriminalise abortion up to birth.
Yeah, the UK is not the US, it's important to say. But we do have some evidence to suggest that anti-abortion messaging and traditional Christian messaging is gaining traction in the UK, and especially on social media among Gen Z. And there are some new anti-abortion groups who are emerging, like Abortion Resistance, who are kind of using flashy, Gen Z-friendly aesthetics to reach young people. So whilst there might not be huge appetite in the UK for these kinds of services, we've seen across the pond quite how quickly the narrative on these things can change, how quickly rights can be rolled back. And that's the argument that was made by those Labour MPs pushing to decriminalise abortion and to get that in the statute book, that actually if we don't protect these rights now and if we don't enshrine them, then we could risk losing them in the future.
And how do you reflect on all of this, having been through this counselling, albeit, as a character, heard from people involved with it, spoken to the people running these things? I mean, how does it all sit with you?
It makes me worry for those women who maybe don't feel that there is any space for them to speak about these knotty, uncomfortable, very private issues, and the ways in which they might be caught up in a sort of riptide that pulls them in one direction, that politicizes their very personal experience, actually. Look, it's important to say that most people actually don't need counselling after an abortion. I think that's a really important point. There's no evidence that abortion harms women's mental health any more than continued but unwanted pregnancy. And in fact, many, many women feel enormous relief afterwards. And I asked BPAS, who are the leading abortion provider in the UK, how many women request counselling both before and after. And they said 14% of people request pre-abortion counselling sessions to talk through a decision, and 4% of people request it afterwards. So it's a minority, but it's still, 4% of women, at least according to their figures. So this idea that, as we know, 90% of people in the UK are pro-choice, that doesn't necessarily mean that you won't have complicated feelings afterwards. And some women that I spoke to described feeling quite ashamed about that, actually, and feeling like because they were pro-choice, they were supposed to feel empowered after their abortions, and that there was, nothing kind of negative to regret, and sort of, well, everyone else can move on quickly, so why can't I? There must be something wrong with me, and that's quite a difficult thing to talk about in this kind of quite politicised space. And it makes me angry on their behalf that there isn't more that is kind of readily available, that as a society we're not better at kind of talking about these things in a mature way, in an open way. There are more women speaking about child loss, whether that's miscarriage, abortion, all these things, and there have been before, and that's a brilliant thing. But the truth is that for a lot of people, it just feels too uncomfortable, too scary to talk about. And that is something for all of us to reflect on.
Constance Kampfner, and you can read her full investigation over at thetimes.com. We'll put a link to that in the description of this episode. That is it from us today. This episode was produced by Rosie Stopher, the executive producer was Taryn Siegel, and sound design and theme composition was by Mal Lasseter. I'm Luke Jones. See you soon.